cover soil surface around the tree with a 3 to 4 inch layer. Keep mulch 6 inches away from the trunk of the tree. So they're showing this diagram in relative to the shape of your root ball, its height, and then they're also showing that they actually put it on top of a little mound inside of the hole, which I've done where the ground is really soft, or conversely, if the ground is really hard and it's compacted and it's full of rock, then you have to fracture the bottom of the hole so the roots are going to make it. But you also can't leave it all soft and loose in the bottom of the hole because your plant will settle right away. So you have to build it up underneath the root ball, and that's what this diagram is showing.
Okay, so my point was that I think this should be, the applicant should spend the time and the expense to come up with all this rather than design review or planning board, right? And if we can make them include it, planting details in the planting.
I think that we need to tell them this is what we want them to include. And the reason that I'm suggesting this is because a lot of the diagrams that I've seen come through the last few years I've been doing this, and when I look at other projects professionally, they don't show taking off the entirety of the basket or the burlap. And when you leave it in the hole, it creates a problem for the roots and the longevity of the tree and the health of the tree. And so I spent a lot of time looking for drawings, partly so that we wouldn't have to recreate them here. And these guys are actually affiliated with a group I used to sit on the board of locally here. And as soon as I found it, I was like, this is great, because that's exactly what we want. And I've showed it to a couple of other people who do what I do, and they're like, yeah, this is good. This is the standard. And I'm like, uh-huh. And, we all know that you can look online and find stuff that isn't the standard, and you can have arguments with people who say, well, I've done it that way for 40 years. So I think we need to ask them to incorporate it into their landscape plans, and then it will be the standard. And I think we can show it as here's the standard, and then we have accomplished our goal both ways. And then we might, if the inspectors are busy until we get a tree warden in town, we might have to have them, the onus be on the owner installer to take pictures of how they're planting the trees. Because the real onus is, if we require 3 years, the tree has to be alive, then if it hasn't been planted properly and it sinks, we can say to them, go back and fix it. Number one. Number two, if it dies, then we'll know either it was a bad tree or something else happened that wasn't supposed to when they planted it. Because sometimes people leave air pockets.
So I don't think, I mean, I don't have any objection to this. None of this doesn't make sense to me. It all seems logical. So at face value, I don't know how we could argue with this. I do think that enforcement becomes the challenge and the issue, as we've seen at an even more significant scale with buildings in town. Well, the two buildings that literally have been built not in accordance with plans. Not even talking landscape. We're talking about buildings.
I'm
you know what I mean? So yeah. I would support this, and it all makes all the sense in the world to me. And I'm fine with using this as the standard and putting it into our agreements and plans. That said, I don't, in the enforcement, I think, is the concerning piece.
Right. So I think, I do know that we've got issues with a couple of buildings in town right now. I think if there was what I'm going to refer to as a catastrophic failure. So let's say none of the electrical was grounded inside, or they didn't do some of their foundation work properly and big cracks showed up right away, or water was flooded into the basement, any number of calamities we can all think of, the roof leaks. Their tenants or their people who'd bought condos from them would be, suing them for starters to fix it. And I think the town would be, right on them, get this fixed, because you still owe us tax money because you've got a building here and you haven't done it properly. So there'd be, an issue with that. And it would be an issue that they had caused, as opposed to an issue of, what went on down in Texas, or a tornado or a hurricane or something like that. I'm hoping that with our new inspector, we might get some new ideas about how we could do some enforcements, or how we could, maybe if people are going by and they think something wrong is going on, they can, drop a dime. Maybe we can figure out a way to do that. I don't know, Joe. I'm just throwing it out there. I know that I'd be happy to go back to sites when they're installing and take a look. And I think I could rope a few other people in town to do that, because I think I know enough people in town who've complained to me about how they plant things. Like they call me up and go, "Did you see how they're planting that?" And I'll be like, "Oh, don't talk to me about it."
So is the point to get these diagrams in a section in the design review guidelines, and then say in those guidelines that the submitted landscape plans must include details,
Must be
I think of
planted.
the right word, but in agreement with what is in the design review guidelines.
How about planted to these specifications?
Right,
Their own
right.
drawing if they want, or they can copy ours, cut and paste ours. I don't care.
Yeah, we just want them in the other document, so that they're not referring, like, what design guidelines, they have to be in the document that's a part of the submitted, but those documents have to reflect the guidelines, just like the amount of glass on the front of a mixed-use building has to reflect the guidelines, right?
And we probably put it in
Right.
for the conditions, just be part of the conditions on every job, so that they have to do it. Like Joe said, though, enforcement the problem, because they're just, oh, we're planting today, and they're planted, and then
Well, we might have to be a little bit, know that that's what they're going to do. And, if I'm in town doing work here, like replanting stock plants and stuff, I can run over at lunch and check stuff out. If I'm
well,
not in town, it's more difficult.
and we can also put that in the conditions too, that before, when they schedule planning, they need to notify somebody. We
Right.
could also put that in there and have them that we need to be notified when you're planting the stuff.
I got an idea, and I don't like. Let me just throw this out there. This pops into my head, but why don't we have as a condition that at the 12 to 24 month post the issuance of the final inspection, the building inspector for the town of Ashland will do a walkthrough on the landscape plan, and any trees or shrubs that have died will be replaced. Like, why? I understand it's a building inspector, but any human being can tell if a plant's dead or not. So
We have to probably have to have a fee with that, right? An inspection fee or something.
That might also extend the 2-year warranty, right?
it might end. Sorry.
It might extend the 2-year warranty. So the
I
first,
think that's the most effective way, is to make the warranty longer, because then they have to, if they have to make sure it lives 3
Right.
years or 5 years, then they're gonna try to do it right, or else they're gonna be pulling it up and putting another one in.
right. So if we made it 4 or 5 years, then that would cover the 2 years plus.
Yeah.
Did everybody look at the mulching one? The mulching one isn't quite as precise.
Oh, sorry.
You have it up. Oh, it's in.
Keep looking for it.
I've got. You want me to put it up?
Hey, my thing is, in our yard, our backyard, I dig a little hole and I throw a tree in there, and 2 years later it's 80 feet tall.
Well, so you might have.
So I don't have to worry about any kind of planting plan or anything. I can plant anything. I swear, I get the dead at the end of the season. I get the $10 trees at Home Depot, and I have a 65-foot tall cherry tree in my backyard from 3 years ago. It just, whatever I plant in the back just goes crazy. So I don't even think about.
How much? Yeah, run over.
Some people are on really good soil
I know.
originally, and or some people, depending on what the builder's done, there's a lot of fill from the foundation of the basement that's all over the place. And then, some people you're already on the side of a hill to begin with, and it's,
And
got ledge sticking out of it. And You know, it's totally variable.
Yeah, and I heard that it was there was a pig farm or something out here at some point, so maybe there's a lot of fertilizer down in the
Oh yeah, all
soil.
found in that right down into the B or C horizon. Yeah, that's excellent.
I just know I can buy the scrawniest tree that's one little twig, and next summer you'll be sitting in its shade, raking up leaves.
Nice. So this is basically the standards. It tells you how to do it and how not to do it. Um, and it's a lot less technical than the other two diagrams, but it's pretty clear.
Well, maybe we put in with our decision, we put in all plants must be guaranteed for however long, 3, 5 years, and consult the attached information for planting, proper planting or whatever, and they can get it from the town or we can give it to them.
Yeah, because it shows, I mean, the drip line is ideally where you're putting the mulch out to at the very least, unless you've got it in a larger bed. That'll protect the tree from mowers and things like that if it's out in the middle of the lawn. Mowers and weed whackers.
Another way this is typically done in specifications is to direct people to, all trees must be planted in accordance with wherever this document comes from,
Missouri Department of Conservation.
Exactly, and it's put in as a note, that way. I mean, I know that's, then it depends on people looking up the note, but I'm also wondering how you take documents like this and insert them into a guideline. Now we're getting into kind of a brochure type of thing. So how do we get these things incorporated into our stuff? Or is it just a package of information that is kept in it's in an online file that they're directed there, proper planting methods, I'm not sure. So I don't think any of us can question like, it says 2 to 4 inches of mulch. Oh, I think it should be 5 to 7, because none of us on the committee are going to know, what the proper thing is. So if we take this as a given that these things are good, how do we?
Well, we could put in there, you're going to have to warranty these plants for 5 years, so you may want to consult these documents so your plants don't die.
Also, the design review guidelines already has an appendix C, which is a suggested planting list. And so I think the thought was that these reference documents could live in that appendix and be added there. And then again, so it is a reference, see appendix C of the design review guidelines, but in that way they're directly connected in the guidelines.
And could something like this in its current form be, I don't know if it's copyrighted, or so could it be just taken and put it in as is to our guidelines?
Generally, the stuff out of the state extensions, which is where I found this, is available to the public for this purpose, because they're part of the land grant institutions. So I didn't specifically call anybody. I would have no idea who to talk to there right now. But I don't think there's an issue with it. I would like there to be something like this out of the University of Massachusetts, but I haven't seen anything. And
we can make sure the citation is included in the appendix.
Right.
Back to the original source.
Now, also, is this the only one that's available, or is this the one that works the best, or are there other ones that vary a little bit?
This is the one that works the best. So, in the winter, I'm trying to finish up business for the season, start business for the next season, and I spend a lot of time doing research. And this was part of research that I started doing last year in preparation for some of this stuff, and also for the tree bylaw stuff, because I know that people don't know how to plant trees. So we're actually in the process. There's, and it might already be out. There might be something on WACA-TV about planting a tree. That somebody else and I, who do this for a living, we're helping with a tree that got planted too deeply at the library, a memorial tree. And so we did a bunch of work root pruning it, and this coming spring or very early summer, we're gonna lift it and replant it so it's not so deep with the dogwood, and we think we can save it. So this is it was the most clear and had the information in it without getting too carried away and without being confusing. If I could find a diagram for mulching, like the tree and shrub and vine planting, that's what I would use, and I haven't been able to find it yet.
Well, once we get all these documents together, I think it would be good to just have, like, even in our decision, we could put down plants must be guaranteed, warranted for however many years, and follow the planting guidelines available at whatever, wherever it's at, wherever you can get it.
Yeah, we might call it an appendix letter. You know, like let's say it's Appendix D or whatever. And
But there have to be a spot like a, you know, the town website under trees, whatever, / whatever, wherever they can find it.
right. No, I think it should be public because it would be great for everybody in town who's planting a tree to know this too.
Yeah. I mean, just as far as our, you know, if we're dealing with a developer and he's planting and it's part of the plan and the decision, then to make it short and sweet is that you're gonna have to guarantee them this long and you need to follow these guidelines as part of, we can put that in the decision, right?
Yeah, it would be great to put it in the decision. And I think if we had it as the standard, then it would shift how, you know, they'll pay more attention to how and what they're planting and how they're doing.
We're already telling them we're approving the landscaping and what they're planting. So
Right.
be able to tell them to do it right and make sure it's warranted.
Well, that's what started me is I kept seeing these diagrams, these planting diagrams on plans that were wrong. And I was like, this isn't right.
Okay, so what we would probably do, so for that thing, I think the thing to do is, Pete, Emma, make a note that when we make decisions, another part of the standard decisions, remember to, you know what I mean, like we do with the traffic control and all the little standard things that are in there. Just want to maybe make a note of that so that we have a checklist when we're getting ready to make a decision that has all this standard stuff in there.
Can I just speak up real quick? Thanks,
Go
Dale.
ahead,
I think
Pete.
that's a great point. I think the best thing to do to make this the clearest is maybe have the design review committee put together a packet and/or I would say the guidelines for plantings, you know, and then adopt it, vote on it, and then we could put it on the website, and then that's something that we could refer to in the decision. You know, all plantings shall, you know,
Form to the guidelines. Yeah.
you know, all planting, you know, the plantings of all landscape material as approved shall be planted in a manner that would, you know, that would respect the Ashland Design Review Guideline planting rules and regulations, or whatever you want to call it. And then also we could tag in, but thank you, Emma.
So I was going to say, so I think the design review committee was interested in adding these guidelines to the the planting guidelines to the design review guidelines as an appendix. And that would require a vote by the planning board to edit the design review guidelines.
Okay.
And I think we already approved it.
Yeah, so the design review committee has already decided that they support these
Do they have
planting guidelines.
Do they have the language yet?
The
So
language,
the diagram sent out would be the appendix.
Okay.
I think so. I think all that makes sense, but I think this should be worked together into a cohesive document that takes this and puts it into one document, which becomes the guidelines rather than 4 or 5 different pieces, right? Emma, go
I
ahead.
think once they're added to the guidelines, they would be one document. Like right now they exist separately, but then once they become the appendix, they would
Part of the
evolve together.
Yeah, so I think what Joe's trying to say is let's try to weave them and put them into the guidelines, and then we could present the full guidelines to the planning board for an adoption vote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks,
And
Peter.
so,
Good.
So I think at the end of the, I think what everyone's trying to say is no one is against this. Everyone thinks it's a good idea. Let's just take the next step and put it together, and then we could come back and then adopt it, and then we could have that living document and to refer to as the planning board makes, additional decisions, and then any other decision in any other condition where you would want to stipulate regarding the confirmation that a tree will last, 36 months after the planting. I think that's fine. And, also, but yeah, no, I think that's the appropriate step to take.
I'm pretty sure there's a couple of places where these could be quote unquote slipped into the existing guidelines, but I can take another look. If there isn't a place, then does this need, I'm not sure I'm going to use the right term. Does it need some sort of a preamble, like a little paragraph that says why we're doing it?
I think so.
And I wonder if
Why?
you need like good and bad examples as well. Like Kathy, you mentioned that you've seen some bad examples out there. I wonder if that will be of help to understand what are the good examples and what is not, as people are picking up on this kind of specifications.
I think that would be good to have available, but in the guidelines, it might be a lot. That's like the electrical code saying, don't do it this way. There would be a lot of don't do this and don't do that. So if we tell them how to do it in the guidelines, but it would be a good idea how not to do it, have some kind of a reference somewhere where they can, supposedly the landscape, aren't they supposed to know how to plant trees and stuff? Or they just get lazy and
Yeah, that's what I was.
It's like
Licensed
everything
landscape.
else. There's good contractors, bad contractors,
Yeah.
and I'll go on. So I'm going to say we can definitely give some references, but I wouldn't want to put it in the guidelines because I think it'll be confusing because somebody will look at the wrong diagram and say, but it says how to do it here. And that will.
So Kathy, can you do that? Can you integrate that into the guidelines we have now and show it, have the guidelines like we do with the changes we make on everything, and then having the red ink, the new stuff, and integrate that in, and then we can approve those new guidelines.
Yes. I might need some help with that, Emma.
Okay, but I think that's what we need to do, is see that in the guidelines, and then we can approve that.
All right, I'm sure I can come up with the language and stuff. I might need Emma. I don't have.
Like you said, you can consult Emma, and you can also, ask the planning board different, we all agree that, trying to just basically want to get these guidelines into the guidelines, and then figure out like how long you would think a good warranty would be.
But I honestly think, 36 months is really the new standard. If we want to make sure that they're going to do it so that, if a tree fails and they come back and they replant it, then we should go to 4 or 5 years. And I guess I'm looking for some guidance right now from you all, because that's what I would put into the.
I would say the longer the better, because especially depending on when they plant it, you might have 1 year where it's still just feeding off of whatever it's came in.
Well, the other thing is to get it watered in a year when,
Hey guys, I think we're good on this, right? I think we know what we want to do. I think 3 years is the minimum. Like, I think we should move on, right?
Mm-hmm.
Want to talk about the sign bylaw?
Yes, let's talk about that. Hello, everyone. I'm Bill Savage. Thanks for having the Design Review Committee allowing us to present. Hopefully you've received a letter. It was titled The Signage Bylaws and Noticeable In-Town Offensives. The language of the letter was, we would like to begin discussions regarding the existing town's signage bylaws and enforcement in an effort to beautify the town's appearance by eliminating non-conforming signage clutter, both on the streetscape and within existing building properties. And then it references bylaws that require existing buildings can have only a maximum of 40% of ground floor window space to be used as signage. And then references what the legal signs are, including surfboard signs, temporary outdoor site signs, and inflatable type signs. Did you have a chance to take a look at that?
Do you have some examples, Bill? Are these things that you guys have been noticing around town or getting complaints about? That it's not something that we're changing a bylaw, we're just seeing that it's not being enforced? Is that right?
Exactly. And how it's worded is the design review committee recommends that the town building inspector begin discussions with local businesses on the enforcement. And I kind of like the wording of that, begins discussions. Enforce a little bit more than what we're doing now, which is nothing. The 40% is common throughout the liquor stores, convenience stores, pizza places. They're often covered with signs. And then in the warmer months, the temporary signs are everywhere. So it's unsightly.
Bill, so what's your understanding of who, or Peter, who owns enforcement of signage?
So the building commissioner,
Inspector.
just
Okay.
Peter Matrick, town planner. How you doing? I think I'm not muted, but no, Joe, the building commissioner is the one that is in charge of doing the inspection. Well, the permitting and the inspections and the follow up on all signs on signs.
Mhm.
With that, can I just want to finish, Bill, that the town of Ashland about 3 weeks ago, we have a new building commissioner, Doug Scott, who started with the town, and he is a seasoned building commissioner that has joined us. And prior to him, Mr. Mike Christofoli, Commissioner Christofoli, who left the town last November, would have been in charge and or oversaw the permitting and the enforcement of signs. And so I think this is a good time, and obviously myself and Emma work very closely with Doug Scott. However, I think it's a good time to bring it up, and we can work on it. But I think also, Doug is new to the town. He's getting to know, not just the people in town hall, but also the residents and the bylaws. And so I think some of this is going to start to happen if it hasn't, if you believe it hasn't been dealt with correctly. But I do want to just kind of put that out there that we do have a brand new building commissioner who's been on the job for about 3 weeks, and he's hitting the ground running. He's doing a great job, and I fully support all the stuff that he's been doing. But also, there is a learning curve, and that is taking place right now.
So Pete, does he have like a schedule? Does the building commissioner have like, once a week I go for 2 hours, I'll drive around, check signs or anything like, or is it just what he happens to see when he's driving around?
So typically, typically our former building commissioner would take Wednesdays, he would schedule a kind of a window, and he would go around and kind of take a look at signs. I'm not too sure yet if our new commissioner has highlighted a window in his work schedule to go in bound signs, just because of the learning curve and obviously being new to the job, Dale. But I think he is, like I said, he's starting to dig into a lot of stuff, and which we're glad that he's doing, and he's doing a great job. But yes, that will be something that he will be doing, I would say.
I would suspect that a lot of these window sign violations, probably comes from a lack of, just not knowing what the bylaw is, or forgetting after, maybe they knew when they went into business, but you just forget over the years when Girl Scouts come in and say, hey, can I hang my sign in the window? And things just get cluttered. So I wonder if just a sheet of paper, 8.5 by 11, that outlines the bylaw, and is something that just can be given out to, whenever he sees someone in violation or whenever he goes into a business, so that they can then work to correct the problem, because I imagine it's just something that they just don't even think about anymore.
Yeah, I think 99% of the time, a quick, conversation, hopefully solves the issue. And with that said, I can work with Doug and to draft something up and to kind of, and that would obviously work with working with design review committee and the planning board to hopefully start kind of reining in some of these violators. But I agree with you, Trish. Having that conversation, helping educate is the first step, and I think that's the appropriate way.
If you have, like I said, a piece of paper with the bylaw on it, something they can refer to, that you can leave with the shop owners, they can refer to that. But it's just easier to do than a conversation that they might just forget about as well.
That's true. That's a good point. I think that's
Education. Again, educating people to.
Yes, that is.
Yes,
Dale.
it is.
Sorry, Dale.
Okay. Okay, so Bill, you happy with that?
Yeah, that sounds great.
We got a new building commissioner. We're working on it, and we're gonna educate and try to get that all under control.
It might also be good if if you have certain businesses in mind, if the design review committee has certain businesses in mind, or if those things can be gathered onto a running list that, a few weeks from now or whatever, you email to Doug and to Peter that here are the businesses that we've noted that are in violation, then Doug has a little bit more focus too, places to kind of that he should check out while he's on his route. Might just make his job easier, like you said, Peter, when he's trying to get up to speed. And
I think that's a great point, because I
Buddy,
think,
get upstairs. Come on.
we're only two sets of eyes, and and obviously everyone on this committee, the planning board lives in town and drives around in town, and obviously is focused on this. So Bill and Kathy and anybody on the committee, if you want to, start a list or of places that you believe may education would help, I think I would greatly appreciate that. Is the more hands on deck make obviously an easier lift, I would say, for all of us.
yeah, and it'd be good to have one of those on kind of one list instead of like shooting Doug an email every other day about another business, that would get really overwhelming and confusing. But if we kind of wait and compile a list, like we can always add to the list, but if we compile an initial list, then he really has, a checklist to kind of go down the line and keep track of the effort.
Well, I think I could say every liquor store,
Yep.
Probably every convenience store.
Yep.
Can I come in on this, please?
Mark, we're having a discussion here. This is
Just about
planning department business.
I know, but
Mark.
he's not going by the straight paperwork though.
Mark. Okay.
just about every single plaza in town has at least one of those temporary surfboard signs that they, that's fabric that they unfold and they stick on a little spike in the ground. Now the snow puts some of those inside, but as soon as the snow goes away, they're going to come back out. Because they were the CVS Plaza on 135, the Market Basket Plaza, the Shaw's Plaza, the plaza across the street from Shaw's, they all had them.
Yeah, so that's
think-
something to discuss. We don't need to get in who's doing what. We just have to have a solution.
Well, I think a general, literally, he could go to start, going to plazas and spend a couple hours in a plaza and just let everybody know what we're.
If we step back for just a second, so I think this is a great discussion, and I think that we're going the right way. I think just to step back for a second, obviously there hasn't been real enforcement of this issue or meaningful enforcement of this issue for some period of time. As we're kind of identifying, there's a lot of stuff out there that shouldn't be. So we're going from a period where there hasn't been a great deal of it, and there's probably a lack of awareness or understanding. So I think the flyer's great, and communicating that out even by email. The economic development function in town probably has a lot of emails of a lot of business owners. And so if we're going to begin to move towards trying to clean this up, I think communication, flyers, emails, starting to get that out there, right?
Exactly.
And then you can move towards okay, now we're going to go out and have some friendly conversations with people and try to move the needle. And I just think look, businesses are having a tough time. We're in an unbelievable place economically, right? So I just don't think this is the exact moment to come down like crazy hard here. I think education, communication, trying to use and be thoughtful about where many businesses are, right? With so many failures and stuff, it's tough. So I just think a more thoughtful approach with this could be kinder to the businesses in town, but also move us towards everything that you guys are all saying, which is like cleaning up some of the stuff, right? Just
Yeah.
my opinion.
I think this is more of our new inspectors issue than the planning board. So because really it's enforcement, so that will be in the planning department. And once he gets going, I'm sure I had a long conversation with him. He was a great guy and he's on it. So it'll take him a while to get to where he needs to be, but it'll be taken care of.
Yeah, I was actually thinking that we'd do more of a PR campaign along with dropping off notices and say, hey, we're starting to seriously think about this stuff. And,
yeah,
coming out of COVID. So, as we come out, start to think about this, we're, because nobody wants to.
Let them know what the rules are and that we're going to start enforcing them.
Right.
Okay.
I don't think if we can start to improve stuff, it'll be just like one more thing that we're trying to improve in town, and it will, start to get better. I don't think it's going to happen overnight.
No. Okay, then you guys had an update on committee work and possible.
Can I come in on this, please?
No, Mark. We don't really.
Because you're talking Ashland Code here.
This is enforcement, Mark.
It's Ashland Code. It's in the paperwork that is not being correctly announced and not correctly language.
Exactly. We all know that.
Then why go on with this subject matter if you're not going to say
I'm trying to stop. You're dragging it on. I'm done. We're moving on to the next one.
That's called pigeonholing and just letting it go.
Okay, we're done. We're moving on.
Moving on means you missed it. Moving on means you missed it. I got the codes right here. That's exact. And Mr. Savage is not exactly going through the right steps. Thank you.
So update on committee work, possible zoning amendments.
Correct. Some of the bylaw amendments, we're looking at the site plan square footage trigger. And we've looked at, I think, about a half dozen other towns to see what that would be. And we have not really come to it. Square footage would be yet, but we're still looking at it. The next thing is parking lot review.
Bill?
Yes.
So 1 second. So just to clarify, so the design review committee is looking at the current Ashland bylaws in that area and doing some research at other neighboring communities at what their bylaws are. And you guys are working towards a place where you want to come to the planning board and potentially propose changes. Do I have that right?
That is correct. Sure.
Okay.
The next item is parking lot review. And I believe in our next meeting, we're going to have a sustainability consultant come talk to us.
You froze. Bill's frozen.
Oh, not here?
There you are. You're back.
All right. I don't know where I dropped off. At the parking lot review, Kathy, did you want to speak at all about that?
This has to do with if people go to redo their parking lots, that we could get improvements to the parking lot and we're concerned that people redo a few spaces at a time or just shy of the square footage that would trigger something else. And if you are paying attention to the science and all those other things and more livable communities, then and you think about where you might want to park a car in the summer, you can never find parking spaces available under trees because they're all taken already. And you're like, oh, I'm in luck if you find one because your car won't be quite so deathly hot when you come back into it. Anyway, there's a whole bunch of things. We thought we'd start with sustainability, see what they had for some ideas. We could also be doing tree planting in parking lots in conjunction with stormwater, because trees take up stormwater, and we would be doing some very specific plantings in those parking lots in that respect, rather than raised plantings that be lowered. They'd still have curbing around them to protect the trees and people driving on them and stuff like that, but the water comes in, and then overflow water, if it doesn't leave that little, it's like a rain garden, except it's a more sophisticated rain garden. Anyway, those are some of our ideas. We're looking to have the sustainability consultant talk to us about them, find out what some of the neighboring towns are doing, and to see how we can, we're not trying to make this onerous, we're trying to make the town a better place. So there's a local business near downtown, actually, that repaved a lot of area in their parking lot that was dirt or hard pack, and that just made this entire thing more permeable. And they sloped to the wetlands in the back, and there's basically like, it's, I'm sure on some of those really bad thunderstorms, that's a waterfall over there. So, we don't want all the pollution on the pavement ending up in the water. So that's part of, it's part of what I'm thinking about when I look at design review. But that parking lot's a sea of asphalt right now. Brand new black asphalt. It's really unpleasant on a 90-degree day.
Yeah, I mean, I think these things are really going to relate to the stormwater management systems, and given the cost to businesses for stormwater management, I mean, I'm wondering if there's and potentially cost of creating, rain gardens, for lack of a better term, swales and things that take up the stormwater, which is another additional expense. So they have stormwater expense, and then they might have, if we put extra regulations on them, they might have these other parking lot expenses. But I'm wondering if there's some way to encourage better parking lots. And I don't know how this works with the stormwater management fees, but you might get stormwater management committee in on it too. So if they can improve their parking lots by doing other things like planting trees and directing stormwater in a different way, whatever, that maybe they get a break on the stormwater costs.
Well,
businesses
yeah.
are.
We might have to think about this slightly differently. I know that people think the stormwater fees are onerous, but they don't begin to cover the costs.
Oh, I understand, but to a business that's already doing all this, it is something that bothers them. So we want to make this something we're encouraging, and versus shoving something else down our business's throats, right? I think there's different ways to approach it.
There's actually something that I've heard about recently, and I haven't had a chance to research it, that we might be getting, not from the stormwater piece, but from the tree planting piece. We might get some help from the state. That might be 2 or 3 years out, but I think they're thinking about it, because everybody's thinking about carbon sequestration and how do we do that and stuff like that. The flip side of this whole argument is also, though, that a whole bunch of private businesses are essentially polluting common streams and waters and bays, and then we, lucky us taxpayers with all our money, have to pay for the cleanup. So, somewhere
I think that shouldn't be happening under even the current bylaws. But what I'm talking about is these other types of improvements that aren't part of the current bylaws, like shaded parking because of trees. So I'm not talking about violations that are happening that shouldn't be happening. But what I'm wondering is like how you can frame this in a way, as in a lot of the sustainable stuff has done in their history, is like, how can you frame this as a way that this is good for business, that this is good for a business's bottom line? I think that's the approach you want to come at it, because all of LEED was formed that way. The whole LEED for, energy efficiency for buildings was formed about how do we make this good for a business's bottom line.
Right.
And I think that's the way that it's just like a way that you might think about approaching it.
Sure. I think
You're
you're
helping
right,
Ashland businesses, not trying to
because trees
work
make
against
your
them.
entire property more pleasant, and they do all the things that LEED already talks about. And in some cases, if this particular entity I'm thinking of hadn't taken all that blacktopping to the edge of literally the hill that looks down on the Sudbury River below, then they could have put in a swale, and they wouldn't have had to spend all that money on the blacktop. They just would have been digging out some of the parking lot that existed there. And I think that there's a lot. It's just reframing it from. You're right. It's reframing it and saying this would be a more pleasant option for you all and for everybody else, and it's a win-win-win. And then you can say, because people use this as a PR. They sell space in their apartments, they rent to people, they keep tenants longer for commercial and residential all the time when they have a pleasanter space.
And also making it so it's almost as good to do it this way with the trees and stuff as it is to do the loopholes and patch here and there. If you make it so it works out to where, well, it's about the same, I'll do it this way. Try to make it as close to that economic.
It's about making it a good business decision.
Yes.
To do the right thing.
Yeah. Rather than I don't want to spend the money, I'm going to do the loopholes and do patch.
Right.
Be done with it.
I think we are a little concerned. We know there's a couple people who essentially figured out what the loopholes were and then bit by bit redeveloped their properties going just under the percentage of renovation. So I think one of the things we're concerned about is figuring out how to stop that, and then working on what Trish was just saying and what you were just saying about, try to reframe it as this would be better, better for you, better for your business, better for Ashland, better to bring in lots of people to Ashland to buy stuff, blah, blah, blah.
And then you're going to continue, Bill? Is there more?
Yeah, a few more. Other ideas were facade requirements in the downtown. This would be materials to be used on the buildings. I brought this up a few months ago when the architect was presenting the exterior building elements for the public safety building. I was asked to review them. And one of the members here suggested that red brick be used. And perhaps we could use that throughout the city for major public buildings. And I kind of bought into it for that particular building. The other buildings, such as 10 to 50 Main Street, I'm not quite so sure that would apply. So this is something that we're discussing.
Okay.
We're also discussing that you wanted to see the actual samples of materials they were going to use, right? They were going to bring their cut sheets and the actual samples of materials so we could actually look at them. Isn't that one of the things we talked about?
Correct. And often they will bring samples for colors and
yeah,
what the materials
that's
are.
definitely something that can be required. We certainly require in-person real samples for planning board, not a digital image, because they're never the same.
Right.
I hesitate very much to put all buildings must use this. To me, that seems restrictive of creativity, restrictive of, I don't know, it has a tendency, I think, to become really banal. So that one I would want to have a much deeper discussion on for something like that.
Okay.
And the last item is document requirements. This would be what we would want to see for our reviews and for the site plan reviews. We were just going through the list that we had, and we'll try to amend that a bit.
I think actually I just wanted to say that, you know, it seemed right before COVID hit in those months, we were really talking about, I know I had this discussion with Peter as to how to, and I know we began kind of the discussion about it, but how to really figure out, you know, what's happening in planning board and what's happening in design review committee and what's on your list and what's on our list,
Right.
so that we don't have to repeat what the other one is doing, and that we can depend on each other to kind of cover your bases and we'll cover our bases, and work together more seamlessly that way. Because I think we have a strong design review committee and we have a strong planning board, and 10 voices should be better than, you know, fewer. But then, like I said, we kind of sunk into this COVID thing and didn't really make any progress on it. So I'd be really interested. I think that benefits not only our two committees, but the developers as well, who I think get really confused by the process. Our process gets muddled. And so I think the clearer we can make it, the better, you know, and the way we can work back and forth between committees would
Well,
Yeah.
the better.
At the walkthrough the other day, somebody, maybe it was a bunch of us, we were standing around, I think at the end, talking about maybe we should have more meetings together, and maybe that's part of what we do, is have meetings about projects. And it might be like, you know, however long a hearing for a project is supposed to take, but maybe we come together jointly for decisions and discussions about projects and say, here's what we're looking at. Or maybe somebody from our committee shows up at the initial meetings and says, here's what we're looking at so far, and here's what we've been asking for. I don't know. I think we need to figure it out, because it would be helpful for us to have our act together and all be working together in town, and it would be helpful for developers. They'd like it better.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure about presenting, like when I think about one of these buildings going up like for discussion with a 10-person committee, basically, I find that sounds like an all-night affair to me. What I think might be better is to just have the lines more clear, the lines in the process more clearly delineated. So if in planning board, we're talking about really about the site, you know, that the site plan, the regulations about how things relate to special permit requirements, if that's what we're talking about. And then what falls under design review, so that we don't get into talking about the width of the window casings in planning board, when really that should be something handled in design review, right? So I think it allows each of our committees to focus on what we should be focusing on and let the other committee do their job.
Well, sorry.
I said that's my 2 cents.
Not sure how to do that.
And I think I think I agree with Trish 100%. Obviously, Trish and I did talk about this during COVID. COVID has thrown a kind of a curveball at everybody. But I think it's these conversations, these meetings, these kind of updates, right? To say, okay, every 6 months, maybe the design, you know, rule of thumb, we could say the design review every 6 months is going to meet with the planning board and come on the agenda, you know, and or, you know, if we do get into a, you know, if there is a larger project, and, you know, obviously I agree with Trish, having a meeting with 10 committee members on one building does sound like an all-night affair, and I don't know if we want to get into one of those. But you know, I think maybe we can delineate the lines and talk about it is the best way to do it. I think it just, one project builds on top of another project, builds on top of another project, and I think that really comes to a matter of consistency, trust, and I would say repetition from one project to the next project to the next project. So,
It might be nice to, like you were saying too, just to have, and once design review goes over their whole process, what, like Trish said, why are we going to do that again? To come in, maybe come in and present it rather than giving us a page that says, here's what we decided. You can come in, we can ask questions, and you can iron out pretty much all that stuff really quick by asking questions. And this is why we decided this was good and that was, and that, and you know what I mean? And have like maybe their section of what the design that they're doing while we're working on the other stuff. And then
Yeah,
they
that
come
could
in
be
and
a good
present the design part of it. And then we either agree or we ask questions, and then they advise us on that. And then we decide they did their job and it's great. And we don't have to worry about that.
Yeah,
Right.
that's kind of a good idea to instead of, like you said, having it be on a piece of paper where you can ask, well, how did you come to that conclusion?
Yeah.
Oh, well, we talked about this and this and this, and
Yes.
that would be really informative.
So
We have big projects and we have little projects. I think some of the little projects you're not going to be too interested in. How about if we do our usual report, and when you see something interesting, just say, come talk to us about this. And we'll come and go through it.
Yeah, I think it's really about those big ones like 12 Pond Street, like the 128 building, things that are the big ones, I think is where those like more in-person presentations might be most useful. The little ones, yeah, I think you got that. You don't,
okay. So maybe we could have we could start setting up that process and kind of.
And just, it's mainly to note it down so that we don't just skip over it. Sometimes you get so involved with what's going on that we just kind of forget to do this or that. It'd be nice to have, again, like on a checklist where this is, we can have them come in and do it, but just to remember to do these things.
Mm-hmm.
And then for some of the major projects, I'd like to see a decent presentation with the drawings that we have requested in our design guidelines, and which we'll amend. Where some of the recent projects have been pretty good, but in the past we've gotten some larger projects that were just junk, and I would like to look at those and immediately reject them and send them back to Emma if they don't meet requirements, and not even bother with a meeting.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree, Bill. We talked about this recently in regards to 12 Pond Street, that we were looking at drawings, just looking at colors basically,
Right.
that did not even reflect the current construction of the building.
Yeah.
And it should be a process now that when those drawings are submitted, they're reviewed, and if they don't match what's in process or what was reviewed, then they're off the agenda. It is done. They don't waste our time if they're not going to present the right materials.
Exactly.
I don't even want to start the discussion with them.
I'm in agreement there. I mean, I think we as a board, working in concert with you, Peter and Emma, like, I think we need to be a lot firmer about ticking and tying things before we get into a meeting, and if you guys look at this package and it's not ready, then it's off the agenda and it's just not going to happen. I agree. I think,
Well, save
we need
time
to
for
start
everybody.
operating that way.
It'll save time for everybody. I mean, instead of us sending them back, oh no, change it, do this, do that. It's not up to snuff. They're wasting time too. So if they have something that's ready to go, if you're going to build a giant building, draw it the way you want it to end up, and not like Tricia calls them the cartoon drawings or whatever they are. That really doesn't represent anything. It's just we all have imagination, but they should draw what they're going to build and build what they draw, what's on the plan. So,
and I got to say on that note, and I'm going to guess the same is true for Tricia, that like, I don't turn stuff into my clients like before I'm going to meet with them. It's like I either bring it and show it to them, or I'm sending it to them ahead of time and say, okay, we're going to look at this and discuss it. And a lot of times pre-COVID, we were all driving home from wherever we were working that day, and so it's not like I can go online and read documents that just got sent in by somebody who's going to come to a meeting in a couple of hours. And some of them are pretty large and complex. I should have more time to sit there and thoughtfully look at them and think about them.
Exactly. We talked, Pete and Emma and I talked about that about having deadlines. We're working on that deadline for, if you're going to be on the agenda, we need to get the paperwork 2 days in advance or whatever, not the night of the meeting, or we're at the meeting and they brought it.
Right, at
Because
least,
that's too hard to make a quick decision.
yeah.
So we're talking about that too.
So, I think one of the things that's really struck me recently in all these building meetings, and Bill, I don't know if we actually put this as part of our stuff, we don't have a delineation with a ground truth delineation about where's the site, the edges of the site, like staked out and flagged, and then where's your building footprint staked out and flagged, so that so you can go down there and walk on the sidewalk or walk down the neighbor's property and go, wow, that's really pretty close. What are they going to think when it goes up with a sheer wall going up 3 and 4 stories right next to somebody? And we might be able to improve some of our discussions about massing and things like that, and how close big buildings are to right on a sidewalk. And I think it would be incredibly helpful for not only us, but maybe for the public to know that these, stakes are out on a job site, and hopefully they can see in, even though there should be fencing up if someone's digging on a job site. But, maybe we should all be doing a meeting like we did the other morning. Hopefully it'll be at the end of the day and taking a walk.
But the issue, you're talking about staking it out while they're building it?
No, I
Because
think
if they do it before and there's already buildings existing there, it might be kind of hard to stake some of that stuff out. I mean, if
they
you're
can
gonna remove
do,
3 buildings off of a lot and put 1 building in the middle, you could go down the sidewalk and show the setback and then put some stakes where this is where the edge of the building is going to go and stuff. But
might
until they raise all the building, it's kind of hard to stake out the whole building sometimes.
well,
And then once they're already into it, they've got their approval. So it's at that point, it's too late. So it would have to be something that's before.
yep, and it might have to be with paint in some cases. I mean, we might have to get a little bit creative about how this gets shown to people. But I think we're really lacking that information, and for some of us who are used to looking at drawings and stuff, we have an idea about what's coming at us like a freight train, but nobody else does, because they just don't look at drawings and think about it that way.
Well, and we have lately been asking them to include the surrounding buildings in their little 3D drawings so you can get a better perspective, which helps. And I know what you're saying. I mean, like a lot of places, they make you stake out the roof line if you're building on a hill so you don't block the person's view and all that stuff. But practically, if there's a bunch of buildings already on there and they're built right up to the street or whatever, it's kind of hard to stake that out. But the point is, we need to get as good of a representation as we can for everybody involved so that we can see it ahead of time, the impact.
So we might, include those sorts of things like staking and flagging, painting, on the ground, etc. We might come up with a couple more examples and just say, and then the rest of what you said, we want to have as accurate a representation as possible about what's happening here. Because I think it's really important. And I think it would help us make better decisions.
And remember in the old days, they used to build the little scale models?
Yes, I do. I have been sitting up here in my office.
Nobody does that anymore, but then.
Well, those were actually useful. And I found some language in another town's design review stuff that's really great, that I think we might be talking about potentially putting in, just to sort of, it shifts how a developer would think about this as an onerous process being thrust on them. The same with, the planning board and site review and all that stuff. It's not an onerous process. We're trying to make Ashland a more livable city. We're trying to make it pleasant for everyone, not just now, but also in the future. And the phrasing was great. Like I don't think I could write it better than that. So anyway, we'll talk to you about that at some point.
So you guys are working on all this stuff, and you're gonna keep us informed and come back and let us know when you've got more button down all the details and some of this stuff, correct?
Yes. So I think, so we'll come back and present when you ask us to present. And then should we do it every 6 months or so regardless, just to touch base?
I think that's a good idea to keep in touch in person or on Zoom.
I think it's more not, I think it's when we talked about presenting, it's more like when we have a big project, but that both of us are dealing with. But otherwise, I think every 6 months, you don't need to present. We're just having a joint meeting so that we can discuss.
What's going on?
Exactly. Any
New ideas, what we can do to improve it.
Yeah, how are things going? How can we improve? What new ideas do we have? That kind of thing.
Like when we're ready with this stuff, we'd contact you and say we're ready for
Yeah.
a meeting. Right? Yeah. Okay. Even if it's like in 3 months.
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously everything's hard right now. So
Right.
all on your schedule. So
Hard is definitely.
Thank you guys very much for all that information. That's good, I guess some good information there and things to think about, and we know what you're working on, which is all positive.
is the design review committee, you're full at 5, right?
Yes.
I think so, yeah. We just brought on 2 new members a few months ago.
Great. That's what I thought, but I
One of whom's with
wasn't
us
sure where we
tonight,
stood.
and the other one couldn't come tonight.
Oh, there's a drama.
Well, thank you very much. You guys need to close your meeting or anything?
Yeah, the last thing is, why don't you guys give Emma a raise? She's really changed our committee, I think.
Yes, actually, and much for the better.
5 years ago, it was a group of guys sitting around gossiping, and she's added a lot of organization, and it's good. It's fun too. So
Good job, Emma. All right.
Way to go, Emma.
Yeah, it's been really helpful actually having somebody from staff with us. That's been a game changer for us, actually.
Thank you, guys.
So do you guys have to close your meeting out before you go?
Well, I know that you have the, I'm sort of interested in the covered porch bylaw, and I'm also interested in what you're talking about with the downtown zoning tour, which,
So if you want to keep it open, if you're gonna have a quorum here, then you can keep it open.
yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Okay, just let us know if you need to just close your meeting, if someone needs to leave or something. All right, so now we have a A&R for 28 South Street. Who's gonna talk about this? Pete?
So I'm gonna take this one, Dale. So,
Okay.
so I was contacted by the applicant on this one on 28 South Street here, and I think everyone really would know this probably better if I referred to it as Outpost Farm over in Holliston. And so I'm gonna share my screen in just a second. However, from the conversations I've had from the Holliston planner, the town of Holliston and the state through the Department of Agriculture have worked together, and they've campaigned to develop a large sum of money to purchase this agricultural restriction that will be placed over Outpost Farm. And so this is a agricultural restriction which is going to protect 28.74 acres of land. And so I'm just going to share my screen quickly, and hopefully I'll be able to explain this to everybody. So can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, so the town of Holliston, like I said, with the Department of Agriculture at the state level and under the Resources Conservation Service through the Department of Agriculture at the federal level, is buying this agriculture, not buying, but investing, I would say, in this agriculture restriction for Outpost Farm. The town of
Can I just clarify one thing there, Peter?
Sure.
So this is not the Outpost Farm retail location. This is the parcel of land at the edge of Ashland and Holliston where Outpost grows much of its produce, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Thank you so much.
And I'm sorry for butting in, please.
No, Joe.
Thank you, Joe. That was helpful. Thank you.
Yes. So this A&R, so this house lot right here is known as 23 South Street. This entire section of the parcel is within Holliston. Right now where my cursor is, where my hand is the town line. Is the town line, is within the town of Ashland. And so therefore, the town of Ashland's planning board, you have to sign off on this A&R. The town of Holliston's planning department has already signed off on this, and the town planner and I are working to set up a date for her to or I to drive over to Holliston to pick up the plan. So what this would be doing is this would be breaking out this house lot right here, and then then identifying the remaining land, which is totals 28.74 acres of land, in which the agriculture restriction will be kind of placed upon. And so just learning more and more about this, the town of Holliston has put forth $500,000, and it's paired that with state funds from the Department of Agriculture and the Natural Resources Conservancy Service has pitched in $600,000. And so, which would total $1.1 million, is being invested to, I would say, protect this land area for agricultural purposes now and then also into the future in perpetuity. And so as I scroll over here to this area, you can kind of see, excuse me, as I play around with this.
Just to give context to this, the Upspring Farm, if you recall, they had it's no longer there, but they had a kiosk where they would do their farm share pickup. And that is, again, it was off South Street, and it's more or less right where Peter's got the cursor. That road that comes off of South Street is where they used to do the pickups. So just trying to frame of reference for this for people. Sorry, Peter, go ahead.
Outpost always own this land though? Or did it belong to Upswing, or were they just renting or leasing?
So Upswing was leasing from Mr. Nickerson, who is the person who lives in the house in this subdivided parcel.
Okay, and so Outpost Farm owns the farm acreage around it?
Mr. Nickerson owns the entire parcel.
Okay.
And he's been leasing the field. He leased it to Upspring, and then he's subsequently been leasing it to Outpost Farm.
Okay.
Thank you, Joe, for that clarification. I did not know that.
Well, and just so I'm just not Mr. Know-It-All, this was something on the CPC which we looked at trying to be involved with here in town as trying to preserve this agricultural land because it was being used. So we looked at this, but when we got into it, it was so substantially in Holliston that Holliston needed to do it at the end of the day, and they are, which is awesome. So anyway, sorry.
Mm-hmm. No, so as Joe said, the grantor of the agriculture restriction would be Mr. Nickerson. The grantee and or the folks that would be receiving and or receiving the agriculture restriction would be both the Department of Agriculture and also the town of Holliston. And then really that's about it. So so just because the land area, obviously I was in 98% of it is within the town of Holliston. However, this portion up here at the front of the road on South Street is within the town of Ashland. That's why it's in front of the planning board here tonight. And that's all I really had on the A&R. Does anybody have any questions or concerns or issues?
That's good.
Who's going to hold the conservation restriction? Or maybe I'm saying that wrong. What entity is going to hold the permanent restriction for agriculture on the land? Is it the state entity that you referenced, Peter?
Yeah, so there's always a third. There's a third. Anytime you're dealing with agriculture restrictions or conservation restrictions, there's three parties, right? And so who is going to own it? It's a great question. And I believe that is the Natural Resources Conservation Service. And so they are the ones that are going to be responsible for doing their yearly annual walks to make sure that this property stays in agriculture use in perpetuity, right? Obviously, at this point, this A&R sets up the boundary, and then once it's signed by the select board in the town of Holliston, and then also typically it's signed by the Conservation Commission in that community, and signed off at the state level, then it becomes a recorded document, almost fairly similar to an easement, right? It's a property right that you're giving up. But no, Joe, that I believe is going to be the Natural Resources Conservation Service. But however, who will be holding it? The town of Holliston will be holding the restriction, and then also the Department of Agriculture will be holding the restriction.
Thank you.
And
And that's permanent, right?
Yes, it's in perpetuity. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And what's cool about this is that if you look to the left of this, that line with the squiggle, it's Audubon property. To the rear, there's a huge parcel of wildlife preservation land that's held by Audubon to the rear of it. So it's a really substantial, piece of perpetually kept open space agriculture / preservation. So this is cool. It's exciting.
Yeah, that's nice.
It's a great
project. And what do we now? So what do we have to do on this, Pete? What's the next?
So fundamentally, we would have to vote tonight, hopefully to approve it if there's no issues concerning the A&R. And then once I get the physical plan, I'm going to have to email out all the planning board members to come in and actually sign physically the A&R. And then I will kind of send it back to the applicant and or the town of Holliston, and they can kind of process it and record it. And then once this is recorded, the town of Holliston and Mr. Nickerson will move forward with executing the final conservation document, which will have to go on record as well. But this plan, like I said, it just outlines the parcel which the restriction will be placed upon.
Okay.
But that is functionality how we have not, I think this is our first or second A&R since COVID has struck, which is fairly interesting. However, but once I do get the plan, the planning board members will have to come in and sign it.
Okay. So there's no other objection. I'll entertain a motion to approve the A&R to 28 South Street.
So moved.
Nope, second.
Sorry.
All in favor?
Trisha Kendall, aye.
Lakshmi Krishnan, aye.
Deepa Venkatai.
Joe Rubertone, aye.
Dale Buchanan, aye. Passes 5-0-0. And Pete, you will just keep us informed on when we need to come in, right?
Yeah, it'll probably be like early next week. I'll reach out I spoke to the planner in Holliston, and we were just trying to set up a time that I was in the office and she was in the office, and we can kind of make the transfer of the plan. So once I get it, I'll email everybody out to stop in, and we'll make ourselves available for whenever everyone's ready.
Thank you. We had a meeting yesterday to walk through the downtown. That was yesterday, right?
That was yesterday.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
To talk about the zoning and look, and it was really, for me, it was helpful to stand there. There was a lot of stuff that you don't see when you're looking at it on paper, but so now we're going to have a discussion about that and some of our ideas, correct?
Correct.
Anybody Anybody want to start? Joe?
Well, yeah, sure. Thank you, Dale. So I guess, first of all, I want to say thank you to all of the planning board members, to Peter and Emma for making it, enabling it to happen, as well as to the design review for being in attendance, and as well as to Mr. DeSoni for being in attendance as a member of the public. I thought it was great, and I thought it was a great discussion, and I just want to say thank you for making that, enabling that to happen. And I think there's a lot. I think we talked about a ton, and I think it's a big, heavy, meaty topic. And so for me, my opinion about like what we should tackle tonight or what we should talk about tonight is, I don't think we should even get into any of the detailed actual zoning issues, right? I think we should just agree on some kind of a framework or some kind of an approach as to how we're going to tackle this. And so I'll try to illustrate an example. Is we have the in-scope map from Peter. You know, maybe we select one end of the in-scope map and say, okay, we're going to start here, and the discussion is going to be focused on this particular piece, and we're going to move our way in this direction. It doesn't have to be that way. Maybe there's a better way to how to structure this, but I think if we just put everything on the table, everybody will be coming at it from their own angle. And I think we kind of need to focus our energy and our efforts and say, we're going to do this piece tonight. What did we see? Right. So again, I think that's where tonight, like, let's agree on how we want to start to chew on this really big gulp, right? That's my opinion, and I'm
Totally
happy to hear what everybody else
I
thinks.
totally agree with that. There may be a point when some of it has to be big picture, everything, because there's different splotchy stuff and that we want to merge together, and three of these areas are going into one. But I agree we should start at one point and just work our way across, and then address everything as it's coming. And then if we go back and say maybe that's part of that, or if there are some big issues, talk about that, but not just jump in and start randomly talking about everything, because there's like you said, there's three different zones down there, and we were trying to figure out which is what and where it stops and why is that this and all that. So I think that's a good idea to start, but keep in mind that it may turn into at some point a big overall discussion because how everything fits together. But I agree. Any other comments? Anybody else?
Yeah, so as we go section by section, especially for me, is there some kind of like a checklist that we can go one by one, whether be it the setback, or I know there was a lot of points thrown out whether we want it to be mixed use or what kind of what should be the whether we should have dormers or not, those kind of like have some kind of checklist that as we go through the sections, we address each and every point as we go through each section, so that each section gets the same review and same elements reviewed as we go through. Can we come up with a checklist? Not it doesn't have to be a coverall checklist, but even the basic things that we need to see.
It's like we got to talk about these 7 things for every single piece, or every
what
I like
what works in this section,
right.
What works, and then we can compare all those and say, look, at these 5 sections can be all one thing.
Right.
And yeah, it's a good idea. So
like maybe we need to come on a consensus on what those top 7 things that we're going to check in every segment, right?
We talked about the setbacks.
Yeah, the setback was talked like very heavily, and I think whether we need to keep it mixed use or residential, depending upon where it is. I think there was some discussion on that based on what I saw when we went through the tour yesterday.
Roof line, building height.
Yeah, that roof line, building height, what we wanted to see.
Down.
what kind of facade we wanted to see. These are some of the points I made yesterday when we went through them.
So just, I'm trying to just jam things down as you say them. So item 1 is, what's the setback requirement? Right, and for clarity, what's the setback from again, it's public way, which is the edge of the sidewalk if one exists, or a curb if none, right? So setback would be 1. 2 would be uses. So all of the I think we're referring more broadly to residential, commercial, mixed use, industrial. Obviously, the use table in our zoning gets huge, but I think we're thinking in like Sim City terms, like 3 or 4 broad categories. Is that like how you?
Yeah, keep it simple
Yes.
right now.
Yeah.
So hold on one second.
Building height.
Yeah. So building height is kind of a standalone. And then I had building characteristics. So the architects in the room, like, and the design people, like, is it architectural characteristics, building like, how do you, what's the right
Description of
like building characteristics, architectural?
Massing, is that a term you're looking for?
Well, it could
I
be
think it's
roof
part of
line
it.
and story.
Building design standards, I guess.
Yeah, it could be in 2 categories, like massing and details, you know,
Okay.
like one is the overall and the other one is looking at the smaller pieces, you know.
So building design standards, one is massing, building massing, the other one is building details.
Yeah, I mean, to keep it simple for now.
Yeah, and there might be some section specific things that we might reconsider, right? If our roads are going to get changed, right? Based on our tour, we found out that some of the sidewalks are going to either go away or change depending upon how the roads are going to get designed. Maybe those are specific to that section of the zone. So maybe we need to have some specific for those zones, like what the setback needs to be there. But I'm just bringing examples of things that came up on when I was going through the tour.
So just to recast, item 1 is setback requirements. Item 2 is high level uses, commercial, residential, mixed use, industrial. 3, building height. 4, building design standards, building massing. 5, building design standards, building detail. What else, guys and gals?
Yeah. The other thing I mentioned was, like, depending upon the zone or the section, we might have some zone specific items that we might need to look at depending upon
Can you give me an example?
Right? Yeah, like for example, like if we are very close to the railway crossing, what do we do for setback? Those kinds of questions. That came to me when we walked around yesterday. Like I heard there's going to be some kind of construction, right? The railway track is going to get changed, or the what is that called? The
Crossing.
The crossing is going to get improved and things like that, right? I don't know what's going to happen, but depending upon that, we might have to make some changes. Maybe, I don't know. I haven't seen what the changes are, so we can't tell you what the changes need.
Yeah. Well,
go
ahead, Dale.
I think that what we need to do is take what's there now in each section and compare it to make up our list of what we think it should be.
Okay.
And then that way, by the time we make our way through, if there's a lot of similarities in a lot of those, we start blending, you know,
Right.
that section works with this piece work.
We said setback, and I think we were primarily talking about setback from the street. But in other properties, like at 81 West Union, we were talking about setting what is the setback to the house next door, you know, so relationships to other zones, or, you know, the side setbacks and the setbacks all around, I think is a consideration. But the front setback is obviously, it's a different discussion than the other ones.
My computer is crashing because it has 19 billion different things open. So I'm unable to. So I think the change I'm trying to make, it would be building setback requirements, you know, be like front or street, and then side and rear. Yeah. So kind of a full 360 kind of a,
Yeah. Yeah, it might be side, it might be front is one discussion and the other three are kind of another discussion in a way, but really just thinking broadly here, is there anything else that needs to go that in those categories? Does anyone have anything different?
Can I add something when you're all done?
Yeah.
Is it green?
About landscaping in general.
We'll talk about the landscaping.
Well, I heard some comments over the past couple of years about, well, there aren't any trees there, so we don't have to include them. And I was like, well, just because they aren't there, because somebody cut them down and paved them over, doesn't mean we can't go back and require them. And I think, one of the things we've repeatedly heard from the residents of Ashland is they want more green, or they want the idea that it's green. So that's why I'm throwing in landscaping.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that I think it's a good point. Is it something that I think we would broadly say that we want landscaping in anything in the downtown area, right? Even a commercial building, we would say, hey, we want some trees, we want some shrubs. So
well,
would we change in the criteria, right? Would we have a different view on that depending on what part we're talking about?
Well, can I just throw something out here for a minute? In the design review guidelines, some of which we're going through now, are the form-based code. There's a whole section of it where some of the things that just got called out, because I took notes and I wrote them all down, some of those are above the line and they're all required. And then some of this other stuff is all below the line and it's
Incentive-based.
There's a term. It says it says preferred or encouraged. No, the term is encouraged. And I'm like, I think some of this stuff we need to require people to think about, and we need to be requiring it for a more livable Ashland, because I think that's what we're being asked.
Okay, part of the big discussion, but Joe, I don't think we should go too deep in here. If we're just making a list, we should kind of make the list, I think, and probably move on.
Yeah.
Because we won't, it's 9 o'clock and we won't get into these details tonight. It's too late.
I agree. So for now, I think it's a good start. So the first thing is we're going to focus our energy at one end or one piece and have a kind of thorough discussion. In the 5 things that we initially agreed on, we're going to talk about in each one are building setback, front, side, rear, uses, a high level 3 or 4 categories, building height, building design standards, massing, building design standards, details. That's like a good, and landscaping. Yeah, sure. Yes. I can't.
That seems like a good list.
Okay. My computer is still completely freaking frozen.
Does anyone have that, Emma, or anybody have that zoning map that you can pop up there or not? Just so we can pick a spot to start and everybody can start getting it in their head. And if you wanted to go by there again and look around or refresh whatever.
And one of the critical things that I think so I think that would be that should be like the final piece of business for tonight is let's pick something to start on and all of us to begin to dig in on our own. The thing that I'd really like to have in our hands, right, is, and I don't know the answer to this, and I look towards Peter and Emma here, but do we have definitive or near definitive downtown streetscape redesigned plans? Because I think I understand that some of it may not be finalized, but there's really big changes that are coming. And I really think that any of these discussions, like in a perfect world, we would take a map, lay those changes on top of the map, and then have our discussion looking at it from that perspective. Right. And it's probably technologically going to be challenging to do. So anyway, is there a definitive streetscape redesign plan, Peter, that we can get our planning board hands on?
Yeah, I have them. And actually, I think we have them on the town website.
And those are like the definitive final ones that are going to happen?
Yeah. No,
Okay.
100%. We have, BSC group has supplied those to the town. We went out to bid, they have, in my eyes, they are the 100%,
Okay.
100% plans. And so we can send those out. What I think, I don't know if we already have done it so far, but most likely I will put them up on our website, and then we will send them out to you as a link, Joe, just because they're fairly large and robust, and they're large documents.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But, yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to suggest that we start at where we kind of ended the other day at Homer Ave over there, because there's talk of someone developing part of that in the works. And if we're in the middle of this, we can integrate that into when they come in, we kind of know where we want to go, and we might be able to push that towards the same thing, unless there's other projects on other parts down there that are going in. But I think just for me, if someone is bringing in, supposedly they're getting ready to bring in a project for that Homer Ave, if we're already discussing how we want that to shape up, it can help us with that, get that project closer or close, or the way we want it to integrate with whatever we're trying to do. Just a suggestion, anybody can chime in.
I think it's as good of a place as any, so.
I was gonna say the same thing.
Done.
Okay, so that's it. We're gonna start.
So just to be descriptive, talking about Homer Ave and that's like, it comes down to the end of Homer Ave and wraps around just in front of the Telecron building.
Yep.
That tip
Triangle.
that triangle, exactly. It is like a peninsula. Yep. Okay.
Yeah, can we see it on the map that we have? Can somebody show it on the map, please?
I was trying to. Emma, do you have that quicker than me? I can try.
Joe, you don't even have video, and your
Yeah.
computer's getting ready to crash. So
My computer's not liking me right now.
Oh, there.
it is.
Okay, got it. So I can see. Okay, so that's the Homer ad. Yeah, okay.
That Homer Ave right there, that little area right there.
Okay, this triangle. Okay.
Remembering that it's like we were talking, it's the train tracks on one side, so it's a good commercial, but on the back side, it's all residential. So that's going to be a good challenging one to start with, I think.
It's a transitional zone.
Yeah. Because it's going to incorporate a lot of stuff. All right, so if we start there.
So does the board feel that by the next meeting, we can individually and thereby collectively
Start digging in.
physically visit there, review the specific uses, really get ready to dig in on this peninsula for the next meeting?
Yep, we can.
Yes, with a reminder halfway through, maybe a reminder next week.
Yeah, and the
Sure.
list, yeah, and if you can send, if somebody can send us the list so that we can make notes as we walk around that area.
Yeah, I can formalize a list and then I'll send it out, but that makes sense.
And also, if we can, with each little area, if you're making a list, can you just throw on there what district it is currently, so that we can compare to what it is now, what we're trying to achieve, reference.
Yeah, no, I'll try to put that together.
Okay.
I think this is a good area, and I can work into kind of section off, not section off, but to kind of go block to block to block up
Right.
the way.
Awesome.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll get to work, everybody. Okay, now we're gonna have a discussion of possible zoning bylaw amendments, including the Dale Buchanan covered porch bylaw.
Hey, you guys, I'm gonna jump off and jump back on because I'm like, my computer's, I can't see or hear anybody. I'll be back.
Okay.
Okay, so last time we were discussing types and shapes and heights. I think I've been thinking about it for this, because even if worse comes to worse, someone would have to go get a variance or a special permit like they have to do now. So I think for our purposes, we need to keep it kind of simple. Like if you want to add just a simple porch without having to go through the whole process, but if it gets too complicated, then you have to go through the process. You know what I mean? If I'm coming across right or not, but to keep this porch bylaw is a little bit narrower. So if you really want to do something elaborate or something is some weird situation, you know, we don't restrict that. You can still go, but make it easier for a simple, basic porch that you can add. You understand what I'm saying?
Dale, if you want, I did gather some images and we could just go through them quickly. I'll point out a few things and then we can have them in our head while we
Okay.
go
Because
through.
some certain types might be way more involved than we want to get to just allow it. So they would have to still go through the process of it, you know, but for a lot of the basic standard porches, we could make it a lot easier.
Let me, are you seeing like a Pinterest board?
Yes,
Okay.
got it.
So, yeah, so let me know if these, I don't know if these are showing up small or if your screen looks just like mine.
Can you guys hear me?
I don't use Pinterest as much as I use House, but I found better images, a more variety of images, I should say, on Pinterest. So anyway, these kind of point out a few things that, just things to think about as we write the bylaw for these for like you said, these simple porches, and some of the things that we were kind of starting to touch on last time. So I assume you guys can see when I'm using my mouse kind of to highlight an image here.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So this is the thing I was trying to avoid,
Yeah.
like these kind of solid half walls.
Yes.
Whether this is open or glass, obviously this is more enclosed, but you could still do this, which I think we don't want to do. I don't think we want to have walls behind which you can hide your boots and stuff
That
like that.
becomes a mud room then.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Not the purpose.
So we want to make sure that if everything has to be open.
Open. Exactly.
Same thing, I think we already said no screens, but these are just showing some different roof types. So we want to be careful. We want to be careful about saying how high something can be, because it may go up in a gable,
Yeah.
like this one over here that gets quite high but looks very nice, you know, on the front of that.
Yeah.
Here's one examples that are shed roofs. So a shed roof versus a gable. Both of those, in my mind, would be considered one-story porches because they don't go into the second story here. And a note that we've had that there's no living space above. So just because you put this on, you can't get there from
on top of it. Yes.
Yeah, or a balcony, like nothing can be on top. Different kinds of rails. Sometimes there's rails, sometimes there's not, because if your porch is 30 inches or less off the ground, you're not required to have rails by code. So sometimes that's good. There's a note in there right now about no flat roofs. So here's a kind of exception over here, what we might want to think about, where someone might want to use a trellis out front versus a whole roof, which I think can be a very nice look. And those are typically flat. So even if just the trellis was the roof, but something we might want to consider, that we can make sure we allow that. We talked about different materials. See, this one actually gets very flat. It isn't quite flat, but it's a low slope roof in order to get underneath the windows. But we talked about not requiring the same material as the roof. Some of these have the same material, but some of these metal roofs actually look very, very nice, you know, on these porches. So some of the porches get, like this one really is the whole length potentially of this house. So they're extending out. I don't think there's anything in the way it's written to prevent that.
Other than height would be, we don't want to restrict the height because that'll, look at the roof on that one. Goes pretty high.
Right. So if this one, if the roof is, if the house is actually back here at the door, their porch,
Line.
yeah, their porch might fully meet all the regulations there. So are we okay with that? That's all I put in here. Just here's another, actually an example of a solid rail. It's still a rail, but I don't think we want that. I don't think we want those solid rails.
It's too easy for someone later to just put some screens in there and
Yeah,
make it into a room.
or just have it filled with junk,
Yeah.
kind of basically. Versus this look, this more open look.
Purpose is more, it's also visual, but it's also community.
Mhm.
So if you're blocking it off, that takes part of it away.
Can I jump in real quick? Because Emma and I had a conversation about this. Trish, from an architectural standpoint, maybe Dale, the solid rail. So within a bylaw, we would state that there shall be no solid rail from, that would prevent airflow and/or, what would be the right terminology from
Would have to put, yeah, no, it would have to be used open or with a railing, depending on what the code of open rail, depending on what the code requires for the height. I mean, they still have to build it to code, which means if it's over 30, they got to put a
36-inch rail
there, but it needs to be an open rail.
Okay.
Not a closed wall, not a half wall, or not a solid wall. I have to think about that wording.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I missed that with, you were discussing,
Just the terminology.
How we would word the closed wall thing, open rail. So it'd have to be open or open railing, depending on what the code requires for height and all that.
yeah, probably open railing. Like I said, the code will only require.
Any railing that installed must be open railing or something like that. The railing installed must be open.
Railings are going to be required if you have a drop off of 30 inches or more. That's code. But you don't have to have any, rail at all. So if you're under that. And
so I think, Pete, to answer your question, if you're jotting it down, any required railing must be open rail or some to that effect.
Is this just residential buildings that you're talking about? All right.
And this is just to make it easier for people that want to build a nice little porch on their front. And there's still going to be situations where they're going to have to go get a variance if it doesn't meet this or that. But this is to make some of the basic ones a little easier. Go get a regular permit and be able to improve it. So encourage people to do a little more, get out into the neighborhood.
Should I stop this share? Should we?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so any ideas on that? Or do you want to mull it over now and
I think, I got the, we got the email with the wording in it so far. So I might make a few suggestions and then I can, send it to Peter as well. But I need to give it a little bit thought. So no need to go through it here, but I think we're close. I think the dimensions we went through last time as far as how far out, I think we got that down. I think that's right,
So my thoughts are a little bit simpler on this, and I definitely would defer to your comments, Trish, your kind of verbiage tweaks, but I mean this sincerely. I do think that if there's any possibility of really naming this the Dale Buchanan Farmer's Porch bylaw, I mean it. Dale has been passionate about this. He's been talking to this committee about this since his earlier days on the planning board.
It's been years.
It's a long time coming. I honestly do think somehow we should work that in, but figure that out.
The unfortunate part is I did this because we wanted to build a porch on our front yard. Neighborhoods change, and I don't know if I want to build a porch on the front yard. It's been so long, you know, it's changed over, and it's, well, some of the neighbors aren't so talkative. But anyway. But I still think it's a good idea because I know a lot of people that have talked about it, and they don't want to go through the whole process of, you know, they're like, why can't I just build a 6-foot porch across the front of my house and then sit out there in the summer, you know? And so I think it'll be good.
Yeah, I think it's good. And I think we're close. Like I said, I think there's just little tweaks to keep it within the
Again,
boundary.
the height restriction, we have to make sure, like you said, we don't limit it, because if there's a tall roof and they come out and it looks really good with that gable end on there, you don't want to make sure that it's like, uh-oh, now we got to slope that down to a less of a pitch because it won't fit in, or we got to go through the process and get a variance. So, you know, make it look good. We can put on there too, it just has to look good. I don't know how you enforce that, but I really appreciate all the input and everything. Thank you guys for taking this on.
Mhm.
It will be your legacy, your planning board legacy.
It's the least we can do, Dale, you know?
Yeah, and I'm gonna make some plaques, and everybody that builds a porch using this is gonna put the plaque up.
Have a little teeny guitar
This
on
was,
it.
yeah, this was made possible by.
Gail,
It's like on the PBS.
LEED
station.
certified, Buchanan certified.
You gotta leave something. Other than probably most of you have seen me in a movie. Anyone watched the Wild Wild West with Will Smith?
Yeah.
In that. So even if you weren't paying attention, you saw me in there. I'm in there.
Are you serious?
are you serious? I'm gonna go see it today then.
It's you have to, don't blink.
Don't
No, it's just the first. There's when they go into this brothel, there's a shot of Kevin Kline dressed as a woman, and they're panning up, and it's me standing right next to him, wiggling my butt, and then I'm doing a couple shots. So it's, you know.
You're kidding me. Is this for real?
Yes.
Or are you messing around?
I am looking it up now.
It's for
All
real.
right. All right.
They go into the bar. I had to sit next to Kevin Kline for 2 weeks, dressed as a woman. They did a pretty realistic job.
You gotta be kidding me.
Let's get back to
Doing
the
shots
agenda.
of
Let's
Diet
get
Coke.
back to the agenda, please.
Warm Diet Coke, doing shots of warm Diet Coke.
Let's get back to the agenda. It's getting
Hey,
late.
Mark, thank you, Mark. Okay.
So
I
anyway,
can't believe it took this long to come out. That's what I want to, you know?
I'll send you a picture. I get a picture.
Yeah, I'm gonna watch it and I'm gonna freeze it and take a picture and send it to everybody.
So Tricia, you're gonna propose some final tweaks to language and verbiage, and you're gonna ship that back to Peter and Emma, and they'll ship it back to us. And in theory, we can do a final review and vote next meeting, and if not, the next meeting. But we're that close, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we have until town meeting, right, to really perfect it, but I think we're close. Yeah.
And then we just have to make sure we have a public hearings and all that,
Yep.
have time for all that. But I think this is really good. I
Yeah,
mean, it
this is-
started off, the one that I took it off, the town, I forget which town in, I gave you that one, was like 2 paragraphs. So I don't know how they're managing that, but there's a lot more involved to it once you get into it, I think, to make it right. So
Yeah.
glad. All right. We'll put that on when we get that kind of written up, correct?
All right, with the minutes and
I
then
got
the
minutes from
administrative matters.
the first minutes are
There's
from,
only one, right? The one from the 14th?
so that's 14th and 28th. Do we have
Oh, okay.
both? Do we have both?
Yeah. You,
Do we want to, everybody want to just breeze through both of them and then we'll vote on each one?
Mm-hmm. Are we doing the 14th one first? I'm assuming yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Design review board committee, do you guys want to take this time to adjourn your meeting since I think all the discussion items are done for the planning board agenda?
Sounds good, Emma. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Do I need to officially adjourn?
Yeah. Emma, do we need to do something or?
Yeah,
Yeah, you can motion to adjourn and vote.
I'm proposing a motion to adjourn, Bill.
Second the motion. Anybody else on the committee still here?
Actually, I think Ujwala just left, so.
We good?
Okay, so I guess we're the two in favor. I'm voting yes.
Bill Savage, aye. We're good. All right. Thank you.
Bye. Emma, for me, the only things on the notes for the 14th are, maybe down on lines 94 to 99. And it's just making sure that when we say like the board reviewed renderings of the proposed roll-up windows, I don't think it's saying anything that they should be coming back with. Applicant will be required to provide updated renderings. I don't know, I want to make sure that what we say here isn't approving anything that day, that we didn't give any kind of approval on anything that we saw, not on colors, not on these roll-up windows, that they were just being.
But didn't we say okay on the roof?
Yeah, there was one thing with, I think that was the next one, that I think that's the next meeting that we look at the roof color. So I'm not sure how to say that, but it seemed to kind of end without that kind of definitive thing saying that nothing was approved.
Can I clarify, Trish and everybody, your memory? So which was the meeting where, was the 14th the meeting where we had the discussion about the fact that this building error had occurred, or was that on the 28th?
That was the
That was
28th,
the
I
following
think,
meeting.
because
The following meeting, okay.
first one, Mr. Zamuto couldn't make it on this one. This is the one where he couldn't make it. He had an issue, so and then he came to the next one. And that's when we talked about that, and then that's when we approved the roof.
Yeah, so this is the one where we had said that I had been to the site that day, that morning, I think. And the architect was showing the renderings. And I said, this is going up right now, and these aren't the colors. And he had not been there to see that. So, so we kind of just stopped it right there, because what were we going to talk about? So But
Yeah.
we did then talk about the windows a little bit again. And I'm not sure why that we did talk about them, but it wasn't a long discussion. But we basically ended it because everything was so inaccurate.
Yeah, we asked for more accurate drawings and
So that might be useful to say after row 102 that, the board instructed the applicant to
provide clear.
provide updated, clarified drawings for the next meeting. Would that make it clear for posterity?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think that's what we did.
Emma, are you good with that? Or Peter, you good with that?
I am good with that, Joe. I think that's a good comment to make on the minutes as I'm looking at, as we look at it.
I guess the one thing like about the windows, when it says that the board reviewed the renderings.
It says proposed.
Yeah, but I
Proposed
don't want it
was-
to be, I don't want it to be like, yeah, we reviewed it and, we thought they were okay. We didn't say that they were,
I agree.
we want it to be that.
The board issued no decision on the matter at this.
Exactly, but issued no decision until the facade could be looked at as a whole or something like that.
That would just be adding after, at the end of that sentence on 98 to say something to the effect of what Tricia just said. I agree.
Okay.
Peter, Em, are you good with those?
I am, Joe. I think that fits in, and I think that tells the story of the meeting.
Cool.
Everybody good with them?
I'm good.
Then is there a motion to approve the minutes from January 14th?
So moved.
Second that.
All in favor?
Trisha Kendall, aye.
Lakshmi Krishnan, I.
Deepa Venkatai.
Joe Robertson, aye.
Dale Buchanan, aye. Passes 5-0-0. Okay, then the next ones are from the 28th.
This is gonna be fun.
On line 44, when it said Mr. Chen confirmed the height of 6.2 versus 8.2, weren't we looking at the width of the brick?
Yes.
Yes, you're right.
We're kind of talking about how there was more brick now and less glass, I think, was the issue.
I think we did talk about the height too, because there's more brick over the top.
Yeah, I think that next line about replacing the trim above the window with stationary glass was recommended.
Yeah.
I think that has something to do with, we lost glass. We lost.
Now,
glass
yeah,
there.
now there's a couple extra rows of brick above the windows.
Yeah.
So, excuse me, I'm sorry. So on the downtown zoning thing, rows 20 through 22 do definitely, those are the documents that I do think we need to get our hands on for this zoning discussion. There's the ULI report, the results of the community downtown survey. If we could, Peter and Emma, if we can, I understand that some of that may be on the town website, but I think it'd be best if you guys could surface those to the board via email so to make sure we have that for this next phase. Row 21 and 22. So I'm not proposing a change to the minutes. I'm just saying we did agree that we wanted to have those documents as kind of bookends to this discussion.
No, Joe, and I know you you spoke of that yesterday. So
Yeah,
I think
cool.
We owe that to you, and I will get that to you as soon as possible.
Cool. Thank you.
And on that, while everybody's reading those, Pete and him and I had a discussion about putting all of the final approved documents for a project in one folder So we don't have to get to the point where it's like, I'm looking from this one from the 12th, and I'm looking from that one from November, and this was approved from that. So once a project is done, they're going to try to get all those documents, even if it's repetitive, in one folder that go with the project, so that if we have to reference something, it's all in that, everything that's been approved is in that folder, or I don't know how you're going to do it, but in that section, so that it'll be easier for us to get copies of it. And even if it's from a previous date that was approved, there'll be another copy of it in the final section of all the final documents. So little just organizational.
Yep, that makes sense. So in lines, when we talk about the roof color driftwood made by TimberTex, I don't remember what the brand was. Is that what that was the sample in your office?
Yeah, the sample was weathered wood.
Okay. I remember, well, driftwood, right?
I'm sorry, driftwood.
But the brand was TimberTex?
I believe so. I can look at the sample tomorrow and double check that.
Because I took some pictures. I looked at my pictures, but I didn't get the top of it to register the brand. That's not a brand I'm that familiar with. Usually it's like Owen Corning's or GAF or so I don't know if that's like a sub brand or.
I don't know. I can check the samples and add that into the minutes.
Okay.
So paragraph 34 to 39. So the members raised concern that the presented renderings were inconsistent with what is actually built, thus making the board's evaluation of the project very difficult. I'm fine with that. They also noted the construction drawings and siding colors the board approved on July 13th, 2020 did not match the presentation. They're calling into question. Yeah. So Mr. Chen, so I think this is where I want just clarification. So 38, Mr. Chen responded that the reason for the discrepancies was the wrong set of drawings were printed and presented. This needs to be clarified to me substantially. So Mr. Chen responded that the reason for the discrepancies between the final approved construction drawings and the building that has been physically constructed was that the wrong set of finalized drawings were printed and presented to the construction team on site.
Yes.
Mr. Chen acknowledged responsibility for this and apologized to the committee. Like, this is an absolute glaring mistake, and it's nice that he's apologized, but it needs to be much clearer what happened here and the fact that he owned this.
Yeah, I think that's a good call. It's also unclear because it seems like we're still in that sentence that we're still talking about color discrepancies or whatever, when really that was about the back, those two things on the back of the building. That's what that was about.
And I'm going to say this to you guys, and this is slightly out of scope for this moment in this meeting, but I'm going to say it anyway. Mr. Chen has been presented as the architect on the proposed work on the Valentine property. I am not, there's a lot of opinions about that proposal and how the town moves forward, but if that's what we're dealing with, I don't want Jim Chen on that. Right. So
I don't think he has enough experience. I'm not sure, but
yeah, I don't know. But I'm just like this anyway, like, as I said, it's probably out of order in this moment in the night, but I'm just kind of highlighting that, I think. So I would, and I want to one slight click further. I think we should keep reviewing these minutes, but I think that we shouldn't approve these minutes until we get the kind of final revised changes back on this as a board, because I think this is a pretty consequential meeting in 12 Pond Street.
Yeah, it was.
So next meeting, we can approve them, write them up and approve them. That's a pretty big change. And make sure you get it right. Because
Yeah.
like you said, the reason for the discrepancies, it should say the discrepancies in the building, structural discrepancies, because you're talking about colors, like you said, and this sounds like colors, but the building wasn't built correctly, so.
Right.
I mean, we
Okay,
built a
reason
different
for
building because he
discrepancy.
printed the wrong stuff. That's what this is like. It's, yeah, it's a big deal.
It's a big deal.
So.
And then the final thing I have on those is line 73, 74. Ms. Kendall expressed interest in participating in the Main Street Committee and to represent the planning board on the Upper Charles Trail. That should be trail versus trial. But I didn't do that. Someone else was interested, I think, in that.
We'll go back and look at the case, but I think that's, I don't remember you saying that.
I think Trisha just mentioned about somebody reaching out about the Upper Trail Committee, and I don't think we had anybody who kind of jumped at that.
Was that it? Was that what maybe I was just saying?
I think what you
You
said
just-
was because you told Preston that you might be interested in the Upper Charles Trail, right? And then you decided that you might be more interested in the Main Street. So you wanted to see if somebody else was interested in doing.
No, well, I mean, I wasn't really interested in Upper Charles Trail, but I had asked him for more information, like what was the time commitment, so that we could give that to the committee before they said, yeah, I'll be on that too. So I had asked for more information, but I hadn't expressed interest in it.
Okay.
So.
So paragraph, I'm sorry, are we, in terms of the Upper Charles, can I still comment on 41 to 48?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Mr. Miller expressed willingness to modify color paint to meet the board's liking. There's a discussion concerning installed garage doors. There was a discussion concerning the proposed installed garage doors and front row windows that were not approved by the board. Regarding the brick on either side of the entry doors and roll-up windows, Mr. Chen confirmed the height. Replacing the trim above the windows with stationary glass is recommended. The members agree to the 2 bump outs as opposed to 4. There's got to be a better term to refer to these. I know we talk to them as bump outs, but there's got to be a better way to identify them. I think the fact that we make a motion on the pop outs at row 51 to 52, I think we could strike the members agree to the 2 bump outs as opposed to 4. I think we can deal with that in the lower paragraph. They asked Mrs. Zamuda to review their drawings and the board suggested work with the architect to rework. I'm fine with that. Do you follow me? The members agree to the 2 bump outs as opposed to 4 should be stricken on 46.
Yeah, and put it as a separate discussion.
And then 50 to 52. So again, Ms. Kendall made a motion to approve the reduced pop outs at the rear of the building from 4 to 2. So we can't leave this way.
I think maybe gabled bays or something like that.
Something architectural. Yeah.
Yeah.
How'd you say it?
I just threw out like the gabled bays. I'm not sure if, I don't know what the proper term would be for that, but you would at least know what they were, you know.
And I think I think we add a sentence immediately in front of Ms. Kendall is the board discussed whether or not whether or not it made sense to require the developer to replace the improperly constructed rear of the building. The board reached the conclusion that it was not necessary. And then Ms. Kendall made a motion to approve, right? So I think we did discuss it.
Yeah.
Right, so it should say that.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's important that we get this one to express what we want to express in it, these minutes.
And I guess Joe, you're right. So when we begin this whole conversation, it starts with Mr. Chen talks about the 2 bays. So I think we should use the same language throughout versus calling pop outs versus bump outs. I think we're using different, we start with saying that the two base and the rear of the building would be painted. So I guess we should follow the same thing.
Yes.
Yeah, so if it's gabled bays, then let's, whatever,
Make them all gable bays.
so that it ties, yeah. Yep.
We'll make those changes and send them back out to the board.
All right, sounds good.
Okay.
We don't need to approve those yet.
Nope.
Any other notes? Okay.
Just for other matters, I think it makes sense just to highlight in March, we'll be meeting on the 11th and the 25th. St. Patrick's Day is on the 17th, which is a Wednesday. So we'll give everyone that Thursday, that following Thursday off in case someone indulges a little too much in St. Patrick's Day. However, there's no school vacation in March. I think we're okay with that. I will say, just looking at the calendar, typically we will meet the 8th, which is the second Thursday in April. And I think that could be April vacation, just to kind of give everyone the heads up on that, which was because Easter is going to be on the 4th. I don't know what April vacation is, but I'm just kind of looking at the calendar right now. But just in case it falls on that week, I would say. But other than that, I just kind of wanted to put that on the radar. One of the things that I'm dealing with, Emma and I are dealing with right now, is outdoor seating for restaurants. With COVID-19, obviously last year the state allowed outdoor seating. I think it was a great success to keep the restaurants open and viable. Some of the restaurants are proposing fairly large spaces, which is going to have to trigger some sort of planning board review, like the site plan review. So I kind of want to give everyone the heads up on that. Some of the smaller inquiries, regarding 5 to 10 to 12 seats are going to be dealt with in-house in a kind of a more streamlined review process. But I just want to mention that to the planning board, as the planning office does work with Beth Reynolds in economic development and Doug Scott, our new building commissioner, just to kind of as we develop some policies around how outdoor seating is going to be, I would say, this summer coming up, because it's something that has to happen, and obviously we're dealing with it. So I'll keep everyone posted on that. Just wanted to mention that to everybody.
Okay, anybody else have any reports?
I just have a high level question. Any indication from the Attorney General about in-person meetings? My assumption would be that these meetings remain on Zoom through the summer into the fall. But has there been any noise or indication about that changing that anybody is aware of?
No, I'm not aware of anything, Joe. I think no. I am assuming I'm on the assumption that we're going to continue on Zoom through the summertime.
Okay.
And,
got it.
I frankly be surprised if anything changed at this point. I know Baker rolled out a couple of new changes with sports venues and things of that nature. However, I just don't know. I haven't heard anything. I haven't had any emails.
Mm-hmm.
I always keep my ear to the ground on those type of things, and I'll let everyone know.
Cool. Just curious.
Yeah. I would say, assume we'll be on Zoom through the rest of the summer.
Got it. Thanks.
Okay. That it from everybody? I'm going to change my logo. There I am.
He found the picture.
Next to a cross-dressing actor.
Hey, you gotta start
Nice.
somewhere. anywhere. Come on.
Start and end, that was it. No, I just knew crew people and stuff, so it was fun. Just wanted to be in a cowboy movie. So if there's nothing else, we have a motion to adjourn the February 25th meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
Second that.
All in favor?
Trisha Kendall, aye.
Lakshmi Krishnan, I.
Deepa Venkatai.
Joe Robertone, aye.
Dale Buchanan, aye. That passes 5-0. Thank you and good night, everybody.
All right, good night,
Good
everybody.
night, everyone. Bye.